Hey guys, Jeremy here with Simple Little Life. Welcome to another installment of Viewers Knives. All these knives are made by you guys, the viewers of this channel. It is so cool to see what you guys are up to, so let's get right into it. Alright, the first knife we'll look at is sent to us from Ramon, and he's a 35-year-old knife maker from Mexico. He made this knife out of an old file. He used a walnut for the scales, and he used a Dremel for the shaping, and files and sandpaper to do the bevels. I think that's a great looking tanto design there, very nicely done. Ramon, thank you for sending this in to us. Alright, the next few knives we'll look at are from Florian, and he's a 21-year-old knife maker from Austria. He's been messing around with blacksmithing as well as the stock removal method of making knives, and he's just sent in some pictures of his blades. I think these look absolutely fantastic. The finish on these and the attention to detail is just wonderful. Very nicely done. Keep up the great work. Max is a 16-year-old knife maker from Bavaria, Germany, and he said he's found a lot of inspiration from this channel as well as Jimmy DeRista's, so that is quite the company to be listed in for sure. These knives look really great. He's been messing around with knives for about 6 months now, using a lot of tools that he just had, like angle grinders, files, lots of sandpaper, and an old, he says an old junky belt sander. It was a Black & Decker that he turned upside down, so I really like the ingenuity there, the way that you're kind of coming up with whatever tools you actually have around and making these blades. I think these blades look really great. Keep up the great work, Max. Alright, now we're going to head to Australia, and Harley is a 14-year-old knife maker. This is the third blade that he's made. For the steel, he used 1084, and he used G10 for the scales and mosaic pins. I think this is an amazing looking knife. The fit and finish, just fantastic. For your third knife, definitely see that you're spending a lot of time getting your finishes and really fussing over individual steps of the process. So I think this blade turned out really nicely done. Harley, very great work. Keep it up. Alright, T sends pictures of these two knives, the first two knives he's made, and look at these things for your very first knives. What a lot of work at each individual step. All the detailing for the patterning of the blade, it looks like it was an old file there, to the details on the guards and the bolsters, and just what a great blade here. A lot of work and very well executed, so keep up this fantastic work, T. If these are your first two knives, I can't wait to see what your 10th and 11th ones look like. Very nicely done. Alright, the next knife we'll look at is sent to me from George, and he's a 12-year-old from Norway. He actually forged the steel for this blade, and he says he's got a mild steel along the spine and high carbon steel on the edge. That is pretty incredible. The handle, he used a burl, I'm not sure what kind of burl, and then olive wood. George, 12 years old, making a knife like this, that is absolutely inspiring. Keep up the great work. Alright, Eric sends us this knife, and he's a 30-year-old in the United States Air Force. He said he subscribed to this channel right when he began making his first knife. The steel that he used is 01 tool steel. He cut it all out with a hacksaw, and he bought a cheap Harbor Freight sander to do the profiling. He also made his own micarta out of canvas and fiberglass resin. He electro-etched his maker's mark on there and put a forced patina with vinegar. Overall, he's super excited about how this process was and how much fun it was, and that is the important part. That is so cool to see. This blade looks fantastic, Eric. I'm glad to hear you had so much fun. Next, we'll go to Slovakia, and Matus is a 17-year-old knife maker. He said in his email here that he's been studying blacksmithing at school, and that is the coolest thing I've ever heard. I never knew they had those things. I mean, man, we should really get those things going here in North America. What a difference it would make to kids, rather than teach them how to do, like, computer stuff that, I don't know. I've got a lot of respect for countries that still appreciate the hand arts, the metal arts, the making things, very useful skills. Anyways, these knives that he sent us look really fantastic. He made his own Damascus, and he's put all these things together with such love, care, and attention. His portions are really great, and I just think the finish on these knives looks really fantastic as well. So Matus, very nicely done, and I do apologize if I've said your name wrong. Keep up this excellent work. Alright, back to Germany we go. Sam is a 16-year-old knife maker, and he made this knife out of a farrier's rasp. I think it looks absolutely fantastic, very nicely done there. I like the rasp knives when they leave the markings on there so you can tell where they came from, and obviously that is a really great steel to use if you're looking to get into knife making. Sam, a great looking blade, keep up the fantastic work. Jim is a 37-year-old knife maker, and knife making has been a fairly serious hobby of his for about 6 months now. He's made about 12 knives using both the stock removal as well as the forging methods of making knives, and I think this is absolutely fantastic. It's always been something that he's wanted to do, and he finally decided to try it, and I think he's quite impressed with the results that he's getting. These blades look really great, and it's like so many things, you know, so many things you want to do, including knife making. I hear a lot of people talk about knife making like, oh, I'd love to learn how to make knives, and most all the time when they just actually go ahead and try it and do it, there's a little light that goes on and they realize, you know what, I can actually do this. So that is really cool to hear. Jim, thank you for sharing these knives with us. They look fantastic, and I hope you keep loving making knives. Alright, we're going to head to Alaska, and Nick shares this, the very first knife he's ever made. He made it from a saw blade, cut it to shape, and he used a bamboo cutting board and aluminum pins. That is a really great way to repurpose old materials, and you end up with a wonderful knife like this that looks like a really handy, useful blade, perfect for EDC. Very nicely done, Nick. Thank you for sharing your knife with us. Alright, we're going to head to South Australia, and Tyler's a 23-year-old. He's been making knives and blacksmithing on and off for about 8 years, and he's actually started to do it full-time, so that is really cool to hear. He's making and selling his knives, keychains, etc., things that he makes with his own hands, and the feeling of doing that is really quite rewarding. Also, I'll put a link to his Facebook page in the description below, and I think these knives look fantastic. Tyler, so excited to hear that you're able to make a go of this, and I wish you much success making and selling your knives. Thank you for sharing these with us. Lucas sends pictures of these two knives. There's not a whole lot of information on them. Obviously, the one is from a file. Looks like it's kind of in a complete state there, and the other one looks like a different blade altogether. I think these knives look really cool. This looks like an awesome starting point for a very talented knife maker, and I'm also going to put a link to his Instagram in the description below. Thank you for sending these in, Luca. Alright, Jesse is a 20-year-old from Roswell, New Mexico, and this is the third knife that he's made. He says this is the very first one that he's made that can actually be easily carried. I do believe he made this knife for himself, and for the scales there, he used scorched hickory, so that looks really cool when you look how dark and black they are and consider the fact that they've been scorched. I think that's a really cool treatment. Also, the Damascus was some production Damascus that he was given, and he says that he's actually found a retired knife maker living close to him that's helped him a lot with that, and that is really cool to hear. You know, that's one thing, I get that comment quite a bit, is that the knife making community is a community. It's not like, you know, different makers are constantly in competition with each other. I mean, we all love this thing and we support each other and we can help each other out as we can, and it's a fun community to be a part of. And Jesse, it's so cool to hear that you're reaping those benefits and you can learn from a knife maker who has experience in the trade. Your work looks fantastic. Keep it up, and I thank you for sharing it with us. Alright, Joe's from Alabama, and he sends pictures of these two knives that he's made. The first one here, the Damascus, is 153 layers from an old saw blade, and then the other one here is 5160 spring steel, and he used purple heart for the scales for that one. These knives look really great. Very nicely done, Joe. Keep up the great work. Next, we're going to go to Virginia, and Noah is a 14-year-old knife maker. He's been blacksmithing for about a year, and this is actually the 30th knife that he's made. That in itself is really impressive. The steel he used for this was from a 1930s Model A Ford leaf spring. That is really cool. When you consider putting a piece of history like that into another piece of history that you're making with your own hands, that is so cool. Very inspiring, very nicely done. Noah, it's so cool to see young makers like you doing just really cool work like this. Keep it up. Alright, we don't get a lot of submissions from Ireland, so it's always exciting when we get one. Samuel is a 14-year-old knife maker and wannabe blacksmith. That's his description, but I would absolutely have to change that. You are a knife maker and you are a blacksmith. You are doing it, and that means you are, and you're doing it very well. This knife he made is a 5th knife he's ever made, and he used an old rasp for the steel. The handle, he used black G10 and some charcoal acrylic, and the pins are nails. I think this is absolutely fantastic, and he says here that he makes all of his knives in a really dark shed, mostly entirely with hand tools except for a small belt sander which he uses for beveling. So there's a lot of labor, a lot of love and attention to detail that goes into these blades. Samuel, keep up the great work. Thank you for sending this in, and absolutely you are a knife maker and you are a blacksmith. Alright, next we're going to go to some knives from Patrick, and Patrick was a lineman for a power company. 4 years ago he quit his job to make knives full-time. That is really cool to hear. He also had a chance to stop in and visit Off-Grid with Doug and Stacy, really great people. You know that Doug came to visit me and stayed with me for a while. We made a knife together. That is really cool. Also, he's got a YouTube channel and he has an incredibly cool viral video. I'm going to leave a link to the description below to that video. Obviously, you can link to his channel through that as well. But these knives just, obviously, you know, the attention to detail, the fit and the finish of these are definitely cut above. Very nicely done. Keep up the great work, Patrick. I thank you so much for sending your knives in. Just check out the bolsters on this one. Wow, and that burl, not sure what kind of wood it is. That even looks like it has a tapered tang on it. These are just beautiful knives, and I think your work is fantastic. Patrick, thank you for sharing this in with us, and I appreciate the kind words. Alright, now we're going to go to Bulgaria, and Osman is a 17-year-old. He's sharing some pictures of some knives that he's made. The first one here, this small little one, he made it from a saw blade, was a steel, and then oak. The carving knife here as well was from a saw blade and oak. And the big knife was a farming plow and paracord for the scales. Really cool when you consider that he's just finding materials that he can get locally to make these knives, and that is a fantastic way to go, and one that I think is very much overlooked a lot of times by new knife makers. They're like, well, where do I get steel from? You know, if you just kind of look around for a bit, you can get steel material that will end up producing a good usable edge that will last a long time. So Osmond, thank you for sending this in. Thank you for sharing these with us. Your work looks really, really great. Alright, well, we are going to wrap up this edition of Viewers Knives by taking a look at some work from a 13-year-old maker. George is his name. He's actually got a YouTube channel called Wood Turning with George. I'll put a link to that in the description below. I checked out some of his videos and they're really cool. These knives that he's sharing with us are his 3rd and 4th knives, and these look absolutely fantastic. Very usable, very utilitarian blades, and it's so cool when you think about the fact that we've now got a 13-year-old maker who's sharing. First of all, he's actually making, he's actually doing, not only that, he's recording that and presenting it to us in a way that we can learn from him. And to me, that is the sense of community that the making community in YouTube is just so wonderful to be a part of. So George, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for your videos, and this is just really, really cool. Well, thank you guys so much for sending your knives in that we can all see and kind of learning your process. If you'd like to have your knife featured on this channel, just email me, jeremy@homesteadknives.com. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm just in the process of making some changes to my schedule to some different things so I can start ramping up video production again, a lot more knife making content, as well as other content coming out. Also, be sure to leave comments below and encourage these makers. I know it's something for your work to be in front of people, and I know that, a little kind word and people just admiring your work really does a lot for you to continue and be motivated to continue making. And that's what this is all about, just sharing our work with each other. Nobody's perfect here. None of these knives are absolutely flawless, and none of the knives I make are flawless and perfect, but you know what, we're doing our best, we're continually getting better, and that's what it's all about. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Cheers.